Sparrows. Hey, hey. It's Matters of the Heart Monday. Yes, yes, yes. Kathy Ray, Cynthia Dunham. Hello, welcome to the room. Welcome to the room. It's Matters of the Heart Monday. It's going to be a juicy night. Talked a little bit about consciousness, alignment, and the reflections in music. Yeah. Welcome. Come on in. Demetrius, hi. Becky Bass, hi. Come back in again, AZA. I see you were trying to get in, so welcome to the room. Hopefully you've had a fabulous Monday. It's Matters of the Heart. You hear my voice. I've been working on it all day. Guess what? It's still like this, but you know what? The show goes on. Who cares? I'll rest it tomorrow. Rest my voice and doctor on it tomorrow. Okay? Come on in. I am, for those of you who don't know, Valerie Miller of TVM. Double fold this very moment. You have opportunity to change. Yes, we all have opportunity to change and look at life for what it is. If you don't like it, change it. It's that easy. It's that easy. And of course, on Mondays, you know, I always come in from a topic from my book, How I Became Fabulous and a Lady All the Time. So we're going to see if we can get Ace back in here. Yes, we're going to come back in. Hit that silhouette at the bottom of the screen, AZA, so you can get in here. It's not allowing me to bring you in. However, like I said, we're coming from chapter 8. Chapter 8 tonight. And for those of you who haven't read the book, then maybe you should. Many layers, because it takes many layers of us to understand who we are, get to know who we are, figure out what we like about ourselves in order to change it, right? That's the only way we're going to change, when we know who we are and we want to do something different, have a different thing in our lives. That's what's important. There he is.
Hey.
Hi there. Hey, let's make some adjustments here. I was just introducing myself, and as you all can see, AZA is in the room.
I
Yeah,
am. Can you hear me
yeah,
okay?
I can hear you perfectly fine. I'm going to have to
Cool.
project a little louder because you hear the tone of the voice is still the
Okay.
same. It's still the
Yeah.
same. It's a little bit better than it was earlier today, though. I won't complain about it, you know?
Good. Good.
Yeah. I was just telling the Sparrows, we're coming from chapter 8 tonight, many layers. And it takes many layers of us getting to know ourselves in order to
Mm.
make any change that we need to make in our lives. And
Yeah.
due to those layers and those changes, where I came from in this book, it took music, different types of music to resonate with where I was in my life at that time. And music is a beautiful thing. It takes us to places that, you know, brings about recollection,
Yeah.
you know, times and places.
It's a
And
powerful force.
isn't it? Worldwide liberation, or whatever you need for it to be. It can
Yeah.
change trajectory. It has that type of power, just a sound.
Yeah. I mean,
And
you
the,
look across, any aspect of sort of civilized, where humans have organized themselves into society, and you see
right,
music in some form, whether it just be rhythmic or whether it be, chant songs. It's always a way that people are connected across, all different sorts of cultures. And
exactly. And then looking at evolvement as well. We change every day. We can choose to change. Sometimes we're forced into change, but change takes place every single day. And it takes courage. And I put up a post earlier. a poem, or shall I say a quote from E. Cummings. It takes courage to grow up and become who you were really meant to be. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite. That's my fave. Very profound within itself. Very profound.
Yeah, I think a lot of our development is sort of conditioning us away from who we are into what society says we're supposed to be. And
Exactly.
so we kind of build this narrative that is largely based on things that we were told we were supposed to be,
Right.
and molds that we were supposed to fit. And when we start to really discover who we are, there's like a lot of things that we have to undo in order to be able to actually be the thing, because we spend so much time building these things around us that aren't actually authentic to who we are.
That's
So
that's
then when we find out who we really are, we have to start breaking down a lot of these things in order to grow in the direction we need to, and that can be painful, to destroy things that once had a prominent place, in your life.
yeah. It's what you know. It's what you've become accustomed to. It's your complete life. And when to say the magic word is courage. It takes courage to change and to become that person. And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen right away.
No.
But I'm one of those people. You have to just crash it all down and say, you know what? I'm going to be me. I'm going to be fabulous. And I'm going to do it every single day. I'm not going to
Yeah.
follow the lead of somebody else because it takes time, it takes effort to unlayer yourself. That's why I have it under many layers. And I wrote about the many layers of myself that I
Yeah.
had to strip away to get to the core and say, wow, this is who I am. This is who I love. I've always had that consciousness though, and
Yeah.
the
And
peace in myself.
because
It's
it
there.
takes it, yeah, because it takes sort of like a certain kind of faith to really be authentic to
Yeah,
yourself. Because I think the value again of a lot of these kind of prescribed modes that we're given by society is that they're kind of predictable. It's like if
right.
I do these things or if I show up in this way, then people will view me as this, and then I get to function as this within my social structure or within my, whatever community. So you kind of have some faith that like if I do these specific things, like I can, but there's no real guarantee that just being yourself works. you
No.
know, or just following your passion sort of gets you to some
Yes,
specific end goal. And so there's this risk that's sort of inherent in that.
it is. It's worth taking.
I think so.
It's
Yeah, I
worth
believe so.
and looking at it from a coaching practice and conscious alignment, basically, the
Yeah,
lifestyle, that is a major step to take. And to accept that for myself and then have business revolved around that,
yeah,
it's going to take a certain type of client to take that step and accept everything that comes along with. And the one thing I do say to every single person that asks me, what is a conscious change coach and strategist? How did you even get there, Valerie? What is
yeah,
this? I always say, I introduce you to yourself
yeah,
because you haven't lived, you haven't awakened yourself because of the conditioning from birth.
yeah,
So once you strip the layers, now you see yourself reflecting back in the mirror and you ask yourself, who am I? And only you can answer that by following your wind and becoming you.
yeah. And I think self-awareness is really a prerequisite to higher consciousness. And
Yeah,
it's like there are just certain things you can't know until you know yourself. And so
exactly.
to get to that next level of consciousness requires you first to ask like the hard questions about yourself, and try
Oh, yeah.
to figure out paths to the answer.
Yeah. Because we may not like what we discover in all of this
No,
unveil.
I mean, oftentimes that's why we're so eager to like attach ourselves to these other narratives, because then we don't have to deal with the truth about ourselves, because we
You
can
got
just
it.
mask it in, some form that
Yeah.
other people already accept.
Yeah. That's what's so juicy. I love it. I love it. Where you can see somebody changing. It's like the bud of a flower, and week over week you see it loosening up, the acceptance,
Mhm.
the acceptance, and then okay, the next thing you know is completely open. It's that flower. and then you realize who you are, and it's like, oh my God, you know. But it's not something that you can say, I wish I had known before now, or anything like that,
Yeah.
because when the time comes, it's the right time. It's always the perfect.
It, I think this idea of time in general, the way that we think about time is just, it's not actually realistic. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I think just always being in a state of gratitude for things that
Right,
come when they come. And
right.
you can't get it seems so self-evident, but it's a hard concept to grasp that like you can't get there until you get there, and there's
Yeah,
just certain things that have to happen in your evolution before you can grasp certain truths.
yeah. It paints the picture. Your past is a preview of what your present is, where you stand in
Yeah,
order to move forward into tomorrow's, into your future. You have to have those things. And I always say the best way of a snapshot of life is the fruits of the spirit. It's 9 of them. And it goes from
yeah,
love, joy, peace, all the way through. And it said long suffering, mildness, meekness, all those things. To me, that's where the discovery comes from. That's where it came from for me. So when you
mm,
start talking about, you know, Galatians 5:22-23, that's it for me. I can't speak for the other person or
right,
whomever,
right, right, right.
but that's where the awakening took place. It was always my favorite scripture. The sparrows were always my favorite from age 8, and the
Yeah,
profound meaning of sparrows. I've always been grateful. 2 o'clock gratitude time every day. That's been many
yeah,
years. Now to blog about that, and you see on my timeline, you may see a picture of a sparrow, and behind that picture is my blog of the day,
yeah.
what my time is for that moment of the day that I send it. So it is very deep rooted and profound, as well as a choice. It's a choice.
It is a choice. And I think once we realize sort of that we actually are empowered to make that choice, it can dramatically change sort of our approach to our spirituality and sort of how our consciousness evolves. And
Right.
I think, the choice we have about what our mindset is going to be and how we choose to show up regardless of like what external pressures are there, and
Right.
the gradual evolution of that ability to really source all of your manifestation from like a place of consciousness as opposed to reacting to whatever external stimulus you're getting. um
Yeah.
yeah, I think the Bible outlines like a really good path to be able to do that.
Hmm. It's my source for everything. You know, a lot of people say, "Well, what do you read? Who's your favorite authors? What's your favorite book?" I say, "Well, it's only one book. No matter who is fabulous and a phenomenal author or whatever who tend to be your favorite, the grassroots of it all, it goes back to the one book. We've all had awakening at some point in time. It's different. So when you look at it from that point, what's to really discuss? It's really nothing much.
Yeah,
It's your higher power, no
well,
matter what it looks like.
right. And I think it's there are many people who have found that, I think in the Bible or in sort of different denominations of Christianity. Um, but there are also many people within Christianity that haven't found that, or many
Yeah.
people that I should say have been exposed to the doctrines of Jesus and exposed to sort of the church
Right.
organization that have no joy or peace or any of the fruits of the spirit, but have been in the
None of
church
the
for
fruit.
decades. And so
Right.
while I think there's some people that I find within like Buddhism or Hinduism or Islam who really believe in that, and they find joy and peace and all those things in that system. But I think it's again that idea of self-awareness and really being true to yourself and authentic, because it's like if someone like you can be in Christianity and that be such a powerful change agent for you,
Right.
someone else who, for whatever reason, hasn't really resonated with Christianity, hasn't really asked questions about Christianity they need to ask, but are labeling themselves as a Christian because that's the narrative, but doesn't have the transformation, Christianity does nothing for them, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the asterisk. Whomever or whatever your higher power is, align with whatever resonates with you. At the end of the day, it's only one.
Yeah.
We have different names, we have different things. It's all alignment. Just align
Mhm.
yourself with who you were actually born to be. And that's
Yeah.
enough. That's
It
it.
is. Yeah.
You came
Hold on.
on, we jumped right into
Can you,
conversation.
okay.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
You can hear me? So we're going to reel it back just a little bit because of the simple fact. I'd like for you to share a little bit about yourself because we're looking also at the music
Okay,
side, you know? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. I'm having a little bit of a connection issue. Can you ask the last question again?
Yes, I said we jumped straight into conversation and never. Can you hear me now? I think there's a little bit of delay.
Yeah.
Hi, LaTrenda. Welcome to the room, everybody. See how juicy it is? Okay. Can we all hear now in the room? Can you hear me as well as AZA? No sound? Freezing? Can you hear anything at all? Because we don't want to carry on until you can hear us.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
you can
There
hear.
was a part. There was a.
It was a delay. I don't know what that was. However, let's carry on.
Okay.
I was just saying,
Let's do it.
we jumped we jumped straight into conversation as soon as you popped into the room and never introduced you.
Yeah.
No.
It's
So I'm going
true.
to back
That
up.
happened.
Just Sparrows. This is AZA. AZA out of Boston, up, New England area. So we are pleased to have him in the room with us tonight. As I said, it's consciousness, alignment, and the reflections of music. And it takes layering to get there, to understand who you are, to say, hey, this is me.
Definitely.
This is me also. This is a part of who I am. All of these things equates to
Yeah.
it equates to me. No two people are the
Definitely.
same, right? So
No.
I'm you paint the picture of AZA, right? Where did you come from? How did you get where you are today? And the the glue that keeps you focused and aligned to why you're there.
Yeah. Wow. That's. We might have to unpack that. But
Break it down.
I would
As
say
you
that.
down. Break it down. But those are the three pieces of the puzzle
Yeah.
because that'll direct like different things of direction of where we can go in this
Yeah.
conversation. We already left in.
Yeah. We already did. So I can just start talking, and then you can just interrupt me with
Ah,
questions
yeah.
along the way. But yeah, my parents, are from Trinidad. So I was born in Brooklyn, but grew up in Trinidad
Mm-hmm.
until maybe middle school and then moved back up here. So, and my parents are Seventh-day Adventists. My dad's a minister. So I grew up in like a very sort of conservative Christian denomination where music also is like very, very important. But my dad was also a pretty liberal thinker, so he exposed me to a lot of different, like he would preach at some churches on Sunday, Sunday Adventist worship on Saturday. He would preach at some churches on Sunday, and I'd go with him. So I got to see sort of these different Christian denominations, and just different styles of worship and things like that. Um,
Right.
Grew up sort of also in a very Black conscious household. Like I read the autobiography of Malcolm X at like 12. Um, was just really into sort of Black history, and um, at a young age really loved music and really loved science. And so there's been like throughout my life those three things, I guess, which is sort of Black consciousness and this issue of the Black identity and Black history, music and science, as sort of three things I've always been into. And
Mm-hmm.
over time have really just followed those passions largely separately, trying to figure out a way to merge them. And then I think, just as I've matured and, really entered a path of trying to become a more conscious person and really self-aware, um, just began to really see the answers in terms of how these things fit together and why it is that I have sort of the interests that I have, and how that can actually be something that, could be valuable and bring peace and fulfillment and joy and like all those things that we were talking about, you know?
Yeah. And once you have that and it's just a feeling, you know,
Yeah,
and you marry all the things that you're attracted to, you've been led to it for purpose. But once you really
yeah,
start digging into it and saying, I like this because, and you start digging and digging and digging, and that's where
yeah,
the from it. Then it's like, oh my gosh. And once you do that, it's to the point of where now I have to change something because I want more of this.
yeah. And I think it's like when you look back and you begin to see how the narrative fits together, and you like retrospectively you start seeing different connections and realizing just how spirit moves, and then you come to your current place in the timeline and you realize that you can sort of be partners in co-creation in terms of what your
Mm-hmm.
future reality looks like. And tapping into that, I think, and you begin to then see things happen in real time,
Yes.
then it changes sort of the way that you view who you are in the world, and how you show up.
Yes. How you show up, how you accept the truth of what is happening, um,
Yes,
connecting with,
that's big. Yeah.
yeah. And it's now you have this hunger to connect with like minds
Hmm.
because maybe some of the people that's been in your circle don't get it. They're not there. We don't all evolve at the same time. So it's a
No.
respect there. It's a respect. However, you're feeling a bit, as for me, a bit disconnected with peers that you've had for many years sometimes. But you need to be aligned with yourself to learn more about the path that you're now
Yeah.
on. I still love you. I just can't hang out with you as much anymore. you know,
Yeah. I
that's
see
another
my I see my bro commented synchronicity, Manny, and
synchronicity.
that's exactly, yeah. And it's something that's been popping up just a lot lately, which would make sense. That would be in line with synchronicity to do that. Um,
It most definitely is.
and
Beyond energy.
yeah,
Energy is one thing. We have energetic connections. But when you are in sync of synchronicity like that, it's an elevation. That is like all the way up. It's almost like, oh my
yeah,
God, you're my brother. How do you even know that? How do we like and on the same wavelength? It's all about vibration. So I love it.
definitely.
And then you
Yeah.
want to
And so,
about
I
it.
mean, for me, huh?
Go ahead.
No, no, I was saying for me, I think being being really into science and always really wanting to understand just the world around me, I was really drawn to biology as a
Right.
child, and really drawn to just behavior. Like, how do animals know how to behave in certain contexts without anyone teaching them? Like, how does DNA encode for that? Like, that was just really a fascinating problem for me to solve. And over time, really became interested in this idea that we can use science to solve problems, in medicine.
Right.
And had a chance to do like cancer biology research as an undergrad. I went to HBCU, North Carolina Central University, for college,
Uh-huh.
which was a really great, great place to learn and grow and kind of become really an adult. Um, and from there, decided to apply to MD PhD programs, and fortunately was accepted to Harvard, and did 2 years of med school there. Realized I was really into psychiatry and really into not just behavior, but like human behavior, and trying to understand sort of
Yes,
the variability of that, and when sort of you get outside a certain, outside a certain percentage, in the bell curve, we call that, insanity. And, where do we draw those lines, and how, like, and how is the brain involved in all that?
exactly.
So did my PhD in neuroscience to start to really understand the brain more, and I think have a background to be able to really ask these questions in a way that I could get real answers. Um, and I'm gonna start in the fall, my research lab, and start my residency in psychiatry.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Um, and music sort of has been, for the longest time in my life, has been something that I did more just for the love of it, and I mean still do for the love of it, but it was more just like sort of self-therapeutic, and
Uh,
something that just sort of I would set these personal goals for myself, um, and started, really playing as a professional musician to be able to like make extra money, um, and like I would play in churches and things like that, um, and those were all really just formative experiences. So in college I minored in jazz studies, um, and like really started learning how to play jazz piano and did like some jazz vocal stuff.
mhm.
Um, but really, for the longest time, just didn't have the self belief to become an independent artist. It was just kind of like, you look at the music. Yeah, it was. I mean, looking back on it now, it's kind of crazy, but
Yeah,
it wasn't, because I also always felt like I couldn't do both. Like I could do both because I was always doing music, but that I couldn't really make music like a career if I wanted to do science as a career.
right,
That, and there's no rule that says that. That was just like a self-limiting belief that I had, and so that
right.
kind of governed the way that I approached it. And I also didn't really believe that I could do it. Honestly, it's just like, it's one of those things that there's no guarantee. The science medicine path is like, it's kind of guaranteed in that like there's very specific benchmarks, like get above this on your MCAT, like get this kind of GPA, volunteer for these things. It's kind of algorithmic. If you follow the algorithm, like you probably will have like a pretty good outcome. You know, there's
Exactly.
not really there's not really as much of that in music. In that, if you're, especially as an independent artist, you can be super talented and just never make it, right? And
That's
so
true.
I had to get to a place where, like, one, not only did I believe in myself to be able to do it, but I also wasn't afraid of failing trying to do it. And it was just
That's
like,
the
I know this
that's
is what I'm
it.
supposed to do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Say you
so I'd rather fail trying it than not do it
you
at all.
did. I'd rather say that anytime. I gave it a
Yeah,
shot and this is the outcome, but guess what? I did that. And so many other
yeah.
people can't say that, you know?
No,
And
yeah,
there isn't a rule that states that you have to do one or the other. It goes back to many layers. It's so many layers to us. It's up to us to unveil them, to
yeah,
try it, see how it works. Can I marry it with this? It doesn't hurt to try. Let's see what it turns out like. And that's what you've
yeah,
done. That's
and
what
it's
I
iterative, right? Yeah, no, exactly. And over time, once you get rid of the idea that you can't do it, then now your brain can actually start problem solving,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you've already said, oh, this can't be done, your brain is not going to spend resources trying to figure out a problem you've already told it can't be solved. Once you
Ex-
remove that barrier and say, oh, this can be done, then now your brain's like, all right, well, how do we actually get this done? And then you can like
strategy.
start being creative and figuring
Yeah.
out ways to like make these things happen,
Strategies. And again, going back, conscious lifestyle strategist.
Hmm.
You already have every ability that you need to do that thing that
Yeah,
you're thinking about, that you're talking about. It doesn't hurt, you
yeah,
know? Latrenda Georgia said that's the key to be open to explore. You have to explore. You have to try it.
yeah,
Give it a chance. If you don't like it, and I say to clients all the time, don't map out your blueprint in ink. Do it in pencil in case you need to go
yeah,
back, erase it. That didn't work, but I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to do this again. Maybe I
yeah,
could do it this way this time. Never
definitely.
give up on it. It's up to you to keep trying until you get it. Fall. You
And
never
I think
fail, you fall, but get fall back up and keep
I,
moving.
everything is a learning experience. Like I don't take anything as an L, because everything is a learning experience. For me, it's like I look at life as just a series of experiments. So it's like I try something, if it works, I gather data and I'm like, okay, great. That now I know that works. apply that formula, that's set. You know, if something doesn't work, it's like, okay, well, let me see, like, where did I go wrong? What's the data telling me? And let me readjust. Let me figure out, what's the next best approach. But it's not something where if it doesn't go well the first time, then you say, oh, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be, or I guess it's not, I guess it's not going to work. Um,
Today.
but yeah, exactly. And I think, a lot of that too is community. Like, who are the people, you kind of mentioned this, but like, who are the people around you? So when I
Exactly.
started taking certain steps, I had people around me that like support it and were
Right.
like, yo, we like that you're doing this, or the fact that you're doing this inspires us to do the thing that we're doing. And when you have that community of people around you, that also really helps you to become more self-aware, because people serve as reflections of
Exactly.
us. And
Right.
so if we're conscious, we begin to see things about ourselves in other people in the way that they trigger us in different ways. And that helps us to also grow.
It sure does. It's the push, subconscious push, you know.
Hmm.
Now I'm hungry for a little bit more. How else can I expound on this? What is the juice in it? What is it
Yeah,
that keeps me attracted to it, moving toward
yeah,
it, completing it? So you have to delve layer under layer, dig, dig, dig. Like, okay, that thing that wakes you up in the morning, you don't mind staying up late at night to work on it, and the joy that you receive when it
yeah.
works.
And again, that takes time too, right? Like, you have to be able to
Tons
actually
of it.
have the time with
Yeah.
yourself to ask yourself those hard questions. And so I think, again, that fear of really having to deal with like the worst, darkest part of ourselves keeps
Uh-huh.
us busy, because we don't
Uh,
want to sit in stillness and just have to deal with like, who are we really,
no.
But it's like, until you get to that, like, you can't really know who you are. Until you really know who you are, you can't really start getting answers to certain questions, you know?
Pull it apart and
Yeah,
stay present. I mean, you have to stand present and look around and acknowledge where you are now, you know, and pull those pieces from the past. It's Jimmy Sevier. You don't forget your history. You don't forget where you came from. It's a lot of clues in that
yeah,
fact, those facts. But if you pull those things, then you have an idea, it's something that you were born with. Take
yeah.
it, pull it apart, pull it
And I think,
apart. It makes room for you. That's true. It really does.
no, no, it does. But I think for Black people, that's also a big part of why we're kind of in the predicament we are as a people, is that like that idea of really being able to lean on your history has been so
Right,
distorted for
right,
us, that
right.
like we have such a false, well, until you really go in and do your own research and like
Study.
do a lot of work, read, study, then it's like your narrative is so warped if you just take it based on what you learned in school or based on society's narrative. So it's hard to
Right.
really begin to understand who you really are and put it into context of like your spiritual legacy and like your
Mm-hmm.
genetic legacy and all these things, when that narrative is already distorted from the beginning. Like, you have no real foundation to base, anything on. And that's, I think, a big problem for our community.
Yes, because we come from such a rich culture. If you
Hmm.
take it out of what you remember, in a sense, of the negative side, and look at the positive side, kings, queens, royalty, creators, innovators had to be put in the position of creativity. Had to be.
Hmm.
So don't
Yeah,
dismiss all of those nuggets because it goes back to your lineage. A lot of what it is that you're aspiring to do because someone in your past, your culture, your family has done that before.
yeah.
You're just
And I
blessed
think,
with that same gene or gift.
yeah, and I think in general, there's no other people that have shown sort of the gift of transmutation in the way that Black people have. It's
No.
like there's no other community really that has taken like tragedy and turned it into such crazy gifts to just the entire world, where like the whole world adopts it. Something like jazz music, right? Where it's
Yes.
like a gift that's now like a worldwide phenomenon. Hip hop, same thing. Again, it doesn't just apply to music, obviously it applies to science. If you look at the ancient Egyptians and sort of how the Greeks, base their whole philosophy on a lot of so it's just like when you really understand sort of how all of these things play and how you're part of that narrative, it gives you a much better access to really start building a foundational understanding of
Stronger
who you
outlook.
are.
Yeah. And you have to do the work. Nothing worth having is going to just come easily. It's going to take a lot of focus, determination, some perseverance. Do what you have to do to get to why you have that urge and you have that pull toward
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, it's the thing that's going to give you the ultimate joy. It's going to be the thing that is going to bring you so much happiness and leverage in your life.
And the
That's it.
person, yeah. And it's like the person that you have to become to like actually achieve that thing is like the person you need to be.
Yes.
So
You
it's like it just works. It works perfectly.
stop ignoring yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. But we're in a society of followers. Very few leaders, but a multitude of followers.
And I think that's by design.
Mm,
Like the educational system is
yes.
sort of designed in that way, and it makes sense. I think within a capitalist framework, like you don't want too many people to be leaders or too many people to think independently. That sort of destroys the whole structure. So it all makes sense,
Oh, yeah.
but unfortunately, when what they're following isn't in their own benefit, then that becomes problematic.
It's fictitious, not
Hmm.
real, facade. It's Hollywood. I
Yeah,
don't want to be like somebody else. That's not a life. And you're following an image, but you don't know the person. But
yeah,
you want to be like that person, but you never, you spend so much time researching them, knowing what they've done today. But if I ask you the question, who are you? You can't answer it. But
right.
you can write a novel on somebody else. And to me, it's sad and it's a great disconnect, from yourself to not know what make you tick.
Yeah, I think, again, sometimes that's why having someone like a therapist or a psychiatrist or a consultation coach or just
Mhm.
someone that can help guide you through some of the difficult parts, because again, if you're really going to try to get to know yourself, then you have to deal with some pain, right? Like you're going to have to
Ooh,
deal with
yes.
some
Uh,
darkness, you're going to have to deal with some fear, you're going to have to deal with a lot of things that we aren't conditioned to want to deal with. And so having someone who can be like, hey, this is how you might be able to navigate this pain or this fear, can sort
yeah.
of help you start cutting through some of those layers to start getting to
Hmm.
some of the core,
Yeah.
because sometimes that's something you can't do on your own.
No, it takes asking the question. I'll never forget the day I asked the question in prayer about it. Like, okay, got a great life, God, this, that, and the third, but something's missing. I need to understand what's missing out of my life to fix it. It needs to be fixed. And when he said, right, here
Hmm.
we go. This is it.
Yeah.
Vulnerability, things you just don't want to share, facts about self that you mask and you put away. And once you start pulling those layers off, and those are the bullets that I have on the bottom of this book, my layers, my stories, my songs. So that's confession.
Yeah.
It was
No, and I
confession.
think that's one of the ways in which for me music is super therapeutic, right? Is that you get to write about things in a creative way that helps you process the thought, helps you process the emotion, helps you communicate it, and maybe use that to help guide someone else. And that whole catharsis is very therapeutic.
Oh,
But because you're
yes.
doing it in the form of music, it gives you sort of a way to get at it without having to, you know, you can express it. You can express it in a way that's creative. So
Um,
for me, I found that really helpful to write about, things that and I think the more you do that as an artist, the more vulnerable you're able to be, the better you become as an artist.
mhm.
Because when you're vulnerable, that's the emotion that people will feel, and that sort of the art that matters is the art that is vulnerable. It's the art that really can tap into something that people are feeling or something
It's
that they're going through.
absolutely
Like,
beautiful. That is
yeah, the superficial
beautiful.
art doesn't really last,
Hmm.
you know.
Right.
And so
Now
for
you
even
have nothing
me,
to
you
hide.
know, making that exactly. So making that forward push, you know, to really start pushing myself as an artist also helped me to start really getting to know myself better and becoming a lot more vulnerable about things that I before, you know, didn't necessarily want to speak on. It gave me a space to become comfortable speaking on them, so now I don't have to use music to speak about them.
Right. Oh my gosh. It's the most liberating thing ever.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a universal sound. Everyone relates to some genre of it.
Yeah.
It tells stories. The lyrics are powerful. And we were talking, and I always say with other artists as well, it takes you back to a date and time of
Yeah,
memory,
definitely.
what you were wearing, who you were
Hmm.
with, the whole nine. And that's, where I write from. I
Yeah.
can put on something during that time and I can write like nobody's business because I'm literally in the element. I just went back there and just
Yeah.
write, 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 write. But then all
Yeah,
of those emotions come up. You have to deal with them, everything. But that's where the
definitely.
healing comes from. It comes
Yeah.
from that. Remember it.
They've even they've even done those studies where they show, you know, patients with different forms of dementia, Alzheimer's, and things like that. And when you play certain music from, you know, their early adulthood, they begin to remember things that, you know, without playing that music, they can't remember. It's like music has this very special access to, you know, parts of our consciousness that, you know, nothing else really has access to. And it's a really fascinating thing because it's like, you know, on one hand, I think there's the actual sort of physical vibration of air molecules that that your ears turn into sound. But then I think
Uh-huh.
there's another energy sort of that isn't really perceived by our five senses that is still
Hmm.
transferred through sort of the creative process of music, you know,
Right.
and sound.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We all have it. And I don't think there's any person anywhere who doesn't have a love for music. Who? I mean, who? Because it may be a different country, jazz, blues, R&B, but at the end of the day, it's expressing an emotion.
Yeah.
It's expressing something that's taken place in life, good, bad, and different. And
Yeah.
you're sharing a story. It's vibrations of sounds.
And I think part of it speaks to something. I think the universal, like the way that music is universal, has to do with the fact that it speaks to that the spirit part of us, right? And the
Right,
conscious part of us, which is universal.
right.
And that's why even if you don't really know the words of a song, you don't even know like where the what the culture is from, you can feel something about the energy or the
And
purpose. Be it like, is this a song that's I'm supposed to dance to? Is this a song that is probably something more sacred? Or you can pick up all of that without knowing anything about where it comes from. It's because there's this spiritual aspect to all music that that connects with something in us that is universal.
agree.
And it's like if you can figure out how to use that energy and use it to package the right messaging, it always seems to be something that's able to sort of synchronize people and move them in a certain
Uh-huh,
conscious direction.
uh-huh. Yeah, that's 100% correct. Because I remember living in Italy. I didn't speak Italian, but I loved listening to Italian radio. So certain songs would come on, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's my song. I didn't know what they were saying, but I knew I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked the
yeah,
beat. I felt her
yeah,
emotions in it, and I was swayed to it every time. And even coming back here to the States, it's a part of my playlist. And the girl's name is Juicy something,
yeah,
but I have her on there. The girl is phenomenal,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
I'm like, I don't even know what she's talking about, but I know this is hot to the point of where I went Googles the song
yeah.
and did a translation from Italian to English so I could
Yeah.
read the lyrics in to
Just to know what
understand
the lyrics
what
were.
I'm in love with. Right.
Yeah.
Nuts, nuts. So I agree with you there. So when it comes
Yeah,
to
no.
know, you know, all that you know from the science side, the studies, how did you marry that to music? Your particular sound, your unique blend of sound.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the scientific side, I guess I look at music sort of like equations in a sense. And that like,
Uh-huh.
music is very mathematical and like there are certain equations that produce certain results, right? So like, and a lot of this actually I learned in church. Because like if you're playing for praise and worship or there's a praise break or something, there are certain chords, there's certain keys, there's certain things that evoke a certain spirit, a certain energy, a certain response from people. And
Right.
so that's part of the spiritual power of music. And so I think because I grew up in such a religious and spiritual tradition, a lot of just how I hear music has that sound to it and has some of that some of that energy to it. And so like even in my last project, Black Pack, which talks about sort of identity and consciousness and sort of tells it through my narrative as like a black person who's like a first generation American, parents are immigrants to being graduating with like an MD from Harvard and a PhD from
Right.
MIT. Like, what does that mean? How do you deal with that? Like, that change and make sense of that. That like super unlikely result. Um,
Right.
but
Because
because a lot of my framework is spiritual, the way that the music sort of tells that narrative does have this kind of, I think, spiritual component to it. Um, and then, I think it's just a lot of my music is inspired by music from the African diaspora. So we kind of talked about gospel already, but jazz, which I studied in college, and really like starting to understand sort of just not even just the evolution of jazz, but how jazz played a role in sort of culture and shaping the way that musicians and people
absolutely
thought about who they were. You
right.
know, um, Hip hop obviously just being a black man who grew up in the 90s, in the 2000s. Hip hop was a big part of what kind of shaped my sound and stuff like that. So all of those things, soul, blues, like my parents listened to a lot of 70s soul music, 60s, 50s, like Nat King Cole, like, so all of those things, like I was really fortunate. My dad's also a musician, so I grew up in just a very you know,
Bam.
musical
Yeah.
background. So all of those things like go into the music in ways that I think are interesting. Reggae is also a huge influence. Bob Marley's like one of my favorite artists. So,
Yeah.
and again, a lot of it because he does also come from a very spiritual place, but with like a very clear eye on social justice, on making comments about how society is and offering spiritual solutions to those
Uh-huh.
problems. So he's someone who I also look up to a lot, not just from the musical standpoint, but how they sought to sort of use music as just a part of their lifestyle and a part of
Right.
their overall just messaging.
It's nuts. I tell you, when you really look at it from the layering like that, I'm a Bob Marley fan as well. He was
Hmm.
always had something prophetic to say. I made a few
Definitely.
words, but when he did speak, it would stop you in your tracks, and give you something to think on,
Hmm.
logic. It makes
Definitely.
sense. And when you were saying coming from a generation within your family of going to Harvard, MIT, all of that, I remember our first conversation. I said to you, have you taken a moment to take all of this in yet? Like
Right.
this is
Yeah.
so powerful. And you had not. Because for me to hear it, those are some major accolades. Major.
Right.
You've reached one thing after the next. And so, of course, the family is beyond proud, but you take all of that of your knowledge and then you twist it to the point of utilizing another layer of yourself, another gift that you possess. It's not something you went out to construct. You were born with that. Your family
Right.
back, my family
Yeah.
back. It's just something that we are born into. And it's up to
Right.
you to put a violin on it. It's up to you. Do
Hmm.
something with it or not, but it's
Right.
there. It's dormant or you're going to raise it up.
Exactly.
So you've bridged all of it. So are
Yeah, and I
these
mean, Are what?
Are these thoughts of yours that intertwine in your mind when you're creating a song, you're writing lyrics? What is that
Yeah, I mean,
process?
I think ultimately, I think another reason why I never felt like I wanted to be an independent artist because I never felt like I had anything worth saying. It's just kind of like, well, what am I going to talk about? And like, why should anyone care about it? Like, I can write music for myself, and like, I've always done that. But in terms of like packaging it and telling, hey, like, hey, listen to this for 20 minutes, like, why should I? And then, like I went through a bunch of different just experiences within like my personal life, like sort of, the fight and sort of like destruction of like my marriage and owning like the role that I had to play in that.
Right,
Just having children sort of is a big boost to sort of your consciousness if you're already on a certain path. It
right,
forces you to just have to be super aware of who you are. Um, and then I think just coming through a PhD that was focused on social neuroscience and having spent a lot of time just studying and looking for ways in which I could be engaged in sort of activism and social justice and starting to feel like there were ideas that I had that people were telling me had value to them in conversation.
right.
And just trying to think about different ways to get some of those ideas to people to talk about, and just realizing obviously that music and actually it took a number of different steps, but like one of the people that I really look up to is Jay-Z. And I remember his 444 album came out and I listened to the messaging in it. And I was just
Mm.
like, wow, like he's giving a lot of information and it's just in this form. And I was like, oh, like I don't need to write. I mean, I'll definitely write a book at some point, but it's like I can actually talk about a lot of things I want to talk about with music, and a
Yeah.
lot of things that I want to get off my chest, a lot of experiences that I've had that might be valuable to other people. I can talk about it through music,
Hmm.
and it's natural for me to do that. It's,
Yeah.
it's really easy and natural for me to write a song. Um, and so
I love
that kind of also became, and then having people actually give me feedback and be like, yo, I listen to this song, every morning, or like, I really love this song. And it's like all people that like know me and like me. So that's fine. But just the
it.
fact that it had value to someone else was just like, okay, that's all I need actually. And discovering like actually all I need is just for it to have value to someone else
It makes
just
it.
gave me the courage to just be like, oh, I can definitely do this because I already know the level of impact that I want to have, which is like, does this mean something to someone and help them, is already there. So why not do it?
It's already there. It comes natural. It doesn't take any effort. So when you can do something as freely as that, it's intended. The world needs it. Someone's waiting for it, you know? So
Right.
you may not have written the book yet, and the key word is
Right.
yet,
Yeah, yeah,
because
no, I would definitely write it at some point.
it's coming.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's coming. But right now, you're just utilizing the platform of how you affect the world with your knowledge, one, and then also through your music. And I
Right.
say all of that because I threatened for years to write a book. I never took it seriously. I said, I have
Mhm.
so much juice in this to talk about, but
Yeah.
where do you even start? I wasn't really serious.
Right.
But when God let me say, you know what, you're going to write a book. And I said, oh, no, 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 not doing that. No, no.
Yeah.
And talk about what, you know? But at the same time, there is juiciness to our lives. Everyone has
Definitely.
their own stories. However, it's something that resonates within your own. If it keeps nudging at you, you need to share it because not everybody has a voice to stand up and recognize something that needs to be said or accept something that you've said or experienced, whether if it comes through a song or if it comes within a chapter of a book. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it's a lot to be said. I have no voice now because I always have something to say all the time. And when you look at it from that standpoint, it's like I do what I do because I love it. I love it.
Right.
I love enjoying bringing information like what you have to
Yeah.
share, awareness. Each one teach one. Maya Angelou. Again, it's just certain people that have stated things throughout my life that I've heard or it resonated in me. I
Yeah.
hold that here. And when I hold it here, that means I'm going to do something about it. I have a
Yeah.
responsibility to share. So I'm going to do
Hmm.
that. And that's where this comes from. Book one, book two is on awareness again, accepting everything that took place for me to have to write here.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a part of accepting. I accept me. Being bold, being
Yeah.
brave, being
Mhm.
fierce, because it takes being bold, brave, and fierce.
It does. It
It
definitely does.
and the courage to stand up and say, hey, this is me. This is what happened. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm telling you for a purpose. Adhere to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And I
know?
mean, when you understand that all of those things, all of those things are part of the story. So
Yeah.
I can't tell the story I have now without the mistakes and without the things that were the prerequisite for me to be the person I am now. So, I learned from those things, but I don't spend time sort of regretting them or trying to undo them, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't. Yeah. You can't
You can't.
undo what's done.
You can't.
It's done. It's a
Yeah.
part of your history now. It's a part of your fabric, your canvas, however you want to look at it. It's a
Yeah.
part of what has made you who you are. That's why no matter what it looks like, embrace it, accept it, and move on because it's leading you somewhere you've never been.
Yeah.
So just know that, you know? Hmm. Now, look at some of these. We haven't read a lot of these comments. Okay, Patricia, this has been so uplifting. I'm glad you're here, Patricia. Welcome to the room, Wanda. And I made a request. I know it was last minute. I text you. And just thinking about the conversation that we've had over the past hour, right?
Yeah.
Of your songs that you have, present or the future
Mhm.
project. Because I
Yeah.
had the liberty of listening to some great music, Sparrows, but I'm not at liberty to share that. So it's going to be up to AZA to share something with us this hour that can take you away to do some assessment over your life of things that you can change to make yourself greater, to push toward, that thing that you were born with. Question yourself, are you doing that now? Have you done it before? Is it something you're seeking? Make sure you align yourself with yourself because it's going to be a day when you actually meet you and make sure you're prepared. So, with that said, what song would you consider to be something perfect to align with tonight, this conversation?
Um, wow. Well, I think I could probably sing a little bit of my song Reach, um, which is on my project Black Pack. It's spelled
Yes.
BL4CKPACK, and you can find it now. It came out, it's released now, so you can find it on, iTunes,
Great.
Tidal, Spotify. Um, and so I'll do a little bit of that. We was really reaching for the skies, my love. Spirit told me that I had to try, my love. My nigga sold some bricks, a couple pies, my lord. So you know I had to get it for the tribe, my lord. We was really reaching for the skies, my lord. Spirit told me that I had to fly, my lord. My nigga sold some bricks, a couple pies, my lord. So you know I had to represent the tribe, my lord. We really only had a couple chances, and life was not a fairy tale romantic. My girl was looking at me like a stranger. Yeah, the family was in danger. The devil tried to snatch me from my manger. I battled everything that he could think of. We did it for the culture, for the thinkers. Just come through to my party, we gon' link up. Our vibes we keeps alive and that's a change. My cousin out of jail, I told him stay up. My LB lost his mind, I told him lay up. One day I get the bag, I have the paper. Now he can work for us and that's a layup. See, that's the type of moves I'm trying to make up. and I can lead the people out of Goshen. And if you don't believe, then you don't know, ish. We was really reaching for the skies, my Lord. Spirit told me that I had to fly, my Lord. My nigga sold some bricks, a couple pies, my Lord. So you know I had to get it for the tribe, my Lord. Just reach up to the skies, my Lord. Tell all of our brothers just to fly, my Lord. So we got higher powers, we can fly, my Lord. So don't you ever let up, never die, my Lord.
I'm all caught up in it.
Yeah, that's kind of a version of it. But yeah, check it out. It's Blackpack, BL4CKPACK, and that song is called Reach.
I love it. I love it. Very impactful. It makes you think, and it really reach quite a few people at the same time. You said an uncle, or was it to keep your head up? And then you
My
said
cousin, yeah.
your girl was looking at you like a stranger. These
Hmm.
things are real life events,
They
real
are
life,
they are real life things. Yeah.
and that's what makes it so powerful. Living
Hmm.
in consciousness, present, real,
Yeah.
in your
Hmm.
face. It's present. You can't change
Yeah.
it. So no
Hmm.
matter how you look at it, no matter who hears it, this isn't even a genre. This is everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's everybody. Reach. I love it. I'll be downloading it to my iTunes. I'll be,
Yay.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And anyone who, listens to the project, please feel free to give me feedback. We love hearing feedback, especially at this early stage. So it's good.
awesome. So how could the Sparrows reach you?
Yeah, so on Facebook you can sort of just follow me in the live here. On Instagram, which I kind of use the most, it's
Yeah,
AZA the Messenger. So that's AZA the Messenger. And you can get links to sort of my music and stuff on there and follow along with just how I'm moving through the different spaces, especially as I, start residency, start my research lab, and really start kicking off things with the label.
right.
Um, and yeah, if you're on iTunes, Tidal, Spotify, Google Play, any of those things, um, and you look up Blackpack, BL4CKPACK, you'll see the music there. My two other projects are Choices and Unlikely Stories. So if you search those with my name, AZA, you'll also see that there as well. And yeah, it's music that, I think will help you sort of vibrate on a high level and just think about, staying conscious. So
Awesomeness. Now, these are previous projects that you mentioned that's currently on
yeah.
iTunes. You're working on something new, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, so Blackpack, that was just released, like actually a week and a half ago, and so we kind of
This
did a
is
rollout for that. So that's my sort of current project, and that's a lot of what I'm performing. Like for instance, Reach, which is my next single, is on that project. There is some sort of new music that I'm working on, but it hasn't really fully taken shape yet, and that won't come out probably for another year, probably after my. I'll do a lot of writing during my intern year, my
yes.
first year of residency, and so there'll probably be some content that comes out of that'll be on the next project. But Blackpack is the new project, and that's sort of what I'm pushing right now.
Awesome. Well, I follow you on both spaces, so
Yeah,
Facebook and Instagram. So I kind of see what you have going on. Just
yeah,
to know, as things are unveiled, because you're that type of person I'm going to keep my eye on. So I just want to see how things unveil. Make sure you come back. I want you to come back, spend some time with us so
definitely,
we can stay in the loop of what's going on with you and what else you have your hands in at the time.
definitely. Just give me the invite.
I would definitely do that. And I know we've had such a juicy conversation. We really haven't had a whole lot of engagement with the Sparrows. So after the broadcast, if you don't mind just kind of going in and responding to whomever who's left any contacts for us.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I appreciate that a
Um,
whole. And thanks a million for coming on with us tonight. I knew it was going to be a very juicy conversation because just from the moment we connect, I said, oh my gosh, I've got to bring this guy on. I've got to bring him on. Because we went in from the first moment. We really did. We just started
yeah,
talking.
we just started talking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And again, it goes back to alignment and connecting that synergy with like minds. So the
yeah,
more you evolve and become yourself, the more you're going to be meeting people that's along the same journey as you're on. So that really equates to something powerful of
yeah,
your direction, you know? So I'm going to
definitely,
say, smooches, thank you so much. I'll be in touch with you on some future things that
definitely.
I mentioned before, and I look forward to doing that. And on that note, I want to go ahead and close out tonight, Sparrows. Love without conditions. Always possess a positive attitude and soar in all you do. I love you, mean it. Have a beautiful evening. Ah, ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Yep.
Switches.